yesterday.
Okay, this should be Hey Vav.
Wait,
Kiefer.
no, that's too far back. Let's go do the more recent ones. Test Skimmel.
Okay. Secondary Arias by rabbinical decree. If a woman is a secondary erva to be a husband to the husband, but not to the yavam, he is forbidden to the husband, but permitted to the yavam. If she is a secondary erva to the yavam, but not to the husband, she is forbidden to the yavam, but is permitted to the husband. If she is a secondary erva to both, she is forbidden to both. She receives neither ketubah nor ufor nor osfrix or nor sustenance, nor worn out property. But their child is legitimate, and we compel him to divorce her. A widow married to a Kohen Gadol, a divorcee, a Kaluta married to an ordinary Kohen, Mamzeros, a Nisonite married to a Yisrael, or the daughter of a Yisrael married to a Nisonite or to a Mamza, they received their ketubah.
So you see what's
If
happened over here is that the Chazal who added the Isser of Shnios, they were more strict on the penalties for marrying Shnios than they were for even for a Torah law. Um,
Mhm.
so it's just one of those interesting things that where a Darabanan actually becomes more machmir than a Doraisa because
Yeah.
people are careful about Doraisa erayos, but Shnios maybe not. So
Okay.
they wanted to make it much more certain.
If the daughter of a Yisrael was betrothed to a Kohen, or pregnant by a Kohen, or waiting even to a Kohen, or similarly the daughter of a Kohen to a Yisrael, she may not eat truma. If the daughter of Israel was betrothed to a Levi, or pregnant by a Levi, or waiting even to the Levi, or similarly the daughter of a Levi to a Israel, she may not eat the tithe. If the daughter of a Levi was betrothed to a Cohen, or pregnant by a Cohen, or waiting even to a Cohen, or similarly the daughter of a Cohen to a Levi, she may not eat truma or the tithe.
Okay, so
If the,
this is according to Rabbi Meir, who
Mhm.
holds that only Levium are allowed to eat maaser. We hold the halacha that maaser is just a monetary obligation to the Levi, and that anyone's allowed to eat it.
Okay.
That's maaser rishon we're talking about.
If the daughter of Israel married a Cohen, she may eat truma. If he died and she has a child by him, she may eat truma. If she then married a Levi, she may eat the tithe. And if he died and he has a child by him, she may eat the tithe. If she then married a Israel, she may not eat truma or the tithe. If he died and she has a child by him, she may not eat truma or the tithe. If her child by the Israel died, she may eat the tithe. If her child by the Levi died, she may eat truma. If her child by the Kohen died, she may not eat truma or the tithe. Okay. Now,
Okay, Bas Kohen Nises Yisrael. Okay, you've got the daughter of a Kohen married to a regular Israel, Lo Techal B'Truma. Obviously, she cannot eat truma. Uh, Mace V'Lahem Ben. However, if the Kohen died and left her with a son, or a daughter for that matter, Lo Techal B'Truma. She's sorry, the Israel died, and but she still cannot eat truma because she's still got children from him. Okay, so now she remarries. Nises Lelevi. Tuchal b'maser. Now, according to Rabbi Meir, she's allowed to eat maser as soon as she marries the Levi. And Mace, now the Levi dies. V'lahem enu ben, but she's still got a child from the Levi. Tuchal b'maser. She stays in her last status. So she's got a child from the Israel and she's got a child from a Levi now. But since the last status was the Levi, she is now permitted to eat maser. Nises lekoin. Now she remarries, and because she's a widow, she's allowed to marry a Kohen. Tochel the truma. Now she's allowed to eat truma again. Meis v'lahamena ben. If the Kohen dies and she has a child from the Kohen, she maintains her last status, and she tochel the truma. She still continues eating truma. Now what happens is Meis benami Kohen. Now her child from the Kohen died. Now she loses her status as Kohen, and she reverts back to the previous status, which is as the wife of a Levi. Lo tochal b'truma, but she can eat maser now. Meis benami Levi, her child from the Levi dies. Lo tochal b'maser. Now she loses her status of being allowed to eat maser. Meis benam Yisrael, and her child from the Israel dies. Choseres lebeis aviha. Now she returns back to her father's house. Now she has no husbands and no children, and she goes back to her father's house as the Kohen. Alzo ne'emar v'shava el beis aviha kinureha milechem aviha tochel. She goes back to her father's house and eats from his food. So, in other words, this is telling us that she returns to the status of eating truma.
all right.
Okay, these are all theoretical questions, which the second, Mishnah Vav, which we just read now, we could have told you the same story from having learned Mishnah Hay, but it's just telling the story in the reverse order. Um, okay, Perek Yud. Ha'isha shehalach ba'ala lemedinas hayam. Okay, so introduction here is that we're dealing with the situation of an aguna, of a woman whose husband has disappeared. But now, Chazal, in order to first of all, in order to matir a woman to remarry, in the Torah, she needs two witnesses. Okay, and the once she has two witnesses, then that anything that two witnesses say is accepted as truth, and nobody has to have any worries about it. Okay, that's the weight that we give to two witnesses. You can put somebody to death on the testimony of two witnesses. Okay, that's how strong two witnesses is. But Chazal didn't want a situation where a woman's husband disappears, and we've got one person who saw him die. So chances are that that guy's not going to be lying about it, but it's still not two witnesses. It's only one witness. Okay. So Chazal made an incredible chiddush that a woman is allowed to remarry based on the testimony of one witness that her husband has died. But they said there are penalties. So first, we're giving you the ability to remarry, but you have to do your due diligence because if you don't do your due diligence and it turns out that your husband is still alive, there is going to be a major penalty for you. Okay, that's the preface to the Mishnayos of this perek, is that we allow one witness to testify about a husband's death, but beware that you
Right.
make sure that this is actually a true story because it's going to bite you if it's not. Okay, so Haisha shehalach ba'ala lemedinas hayam. Woman's husband went overseas, ba'u v'amrula, and well, it says ba'u v'am. It says it in the plural, but really we're talking about in the singular. One person came back and told her, Meis ba'alech, your husband has died. So she accepted this testimony and remarried. And he says, "Va'achar kach ba ba'ala," and now her husband comes home. Oops. Okay. Now, this is where we see what the penalties are. Tetzeh mizeh umizeh. Utzricha heget mizeh umizeh. So she now needs to get a get both from her actual husband, the first husband, and she needs a get from the second husband, not because he was actually married to her, because in truth, do kiddushin to a married woman, nothing happens. But she needs a get just for appearance's sake, in case anyone saw her living with him and said, "Oh, so you can get out of a marriage without a divorce? Okay, cool." Um, all right. V'ein la kesuba. She loses her right to her kesuba completely. She doesn't get from the first husband or from the second husband. Lo peros, lo mazonos. She doesn't get the all the peros of her produce that was left for her husband. Even in both cases, she loses the peros of. Let's say she brought a field in with trees, and the husband took the peros. It stays with him. Lo mazonos, she gets no mazonos. She gets no living expenses from it. Lo belaos, nothing about her. Things that got worn out while she was married to them, no compensation. Lo al zeh v'lo al zeh. Neither husband owes her a thing. V'im natla mizeh u'mizeh tachzir. And if she had seized any property in security for all of these expenses, she must return it without compensation. V'avlad mamzer mizeh u'mizeh. Okay, so basically, obviously, if she had a child from the second husband, in quotes, that's going to be a mamzer because she had from a man who's not a husband. But if she returned to her first husband, and he lived with her after this, and Chazal said, "Wait, you can't do this. She's been living with somebody else in between. You must divorce her. And furthermore, any child that he had with her is they paskined he was a mamzer derabanan." Okay. Lo ze v'leze mitam'in la. If they are Kohanim, they may not become Tameh to bury her. Lo ze v'ze zakayin lo b'metziasa. But not everything goes the husband's way. Neither of them has the right to any metzias that she found. Normally, if a woman finds a metzia, it automatically belongs to her husband. Lo b'ma'aseh yadeha, and what she made with her hands. does not belong to the husband. V'lo the hafaris nedareha, and they may not annul her vows. Haisa bas Yisrael, if she was just a regular bas Yisrael, nifsala bin hakuna, she may not now remarry a Kohen, even if it got before the get. If her husbands both died before they managed to give her a get, and now she's, oh, I'm just a widow now. Now I can marry a Kohen. No, she can't marry a Kohen because she's been living in sin with a man who she's not allowed to be married to. She's passed from the Kohana. Okay. Bas Levi mina maser. If she was a Bas Levi, she may not eat maser. This is according to Rabbi Meir again, who holds that maser may only be eaten by Levium. Bas Kohen mina truma, and if she was a Bas Kohen, she may not eat truma. Ein yorshim shel ze v'yorshim shel ze yorshim es kasubasa. And the kasuba, however, this is what this is talking about is the Ksubas Banin Dichrin. There's a special clause in the Ksuba which is for her male offspring that will are supposed to inherit that are if she dies in her husband's lifetime, then her children will inherit the money of her Ksuba, as opposed to normal rules of Yerusha is that a husband inherits his wife, and then from the husband it goes down to all of his children, right? So
Right.
if he's got children from other wives, then they would wind up inheriting her kasuba. So the kasuba vanindichin is that the value of her kasuba, if she predeceases her husband, her kasuba is inherited by her children only. Okay, so this invalidates the kasuba vanindichin. Um, Where were we? Sorry, I've lost my place. So, in Yoshim shall Zev, Yoshim shall Zeh, Yoshim is Kasubasa. The Mesu, and if these two husbands died and she's left childless, Achiv shall Zev, Achiv shall Zeh, Choltzin v'lo yabmin. So she does require chalitza from both sides. One side Doraisa, one side Durabanan. The actual husband obviously gives her needs his brother needs to give her a chalitza midoraisa, but the other husband's brother needs to give her midorabanan. But and definitely no yibum allowed. Okay. Rabbi Yossi Omer Kesubas Hashel Nichse Ba'ala Harishon. He says Rabbi Yossi is a lot more makil on this woman. He says, look, she made a mistake. It was wrong, and she must get divorced. But she nonetheless retains her kasuba because it was an innocent mistake. So he's a lot more lenient on her and says let her keep her kasuba from her first husband. Rabbi Elazar Omer Harishon Zakai b'Matziasa, and similarly he says the first husband is still entitled to her findings. What did he do wrong? He was just out the picture and he came back and found that his wife was living with another guy. Why should he lose his rights to her mitzias? Over Maaseh Yadeha and whatever she made, over Hafaris Nedareha, and he should be still entitled to annul her vows. That last one is actually an interesting one because the reason why he's supposed to be allowed to annul her vows is because if it's things that are going to come between a man and his wife, that's what he's supposed to. That's why he's supposed to be allowed to divorce her. But since he is allowed to give her to annul her vows, but since he's going to have to divorce her anyway, it's strange that he would there would be a havamina that he should still be allowed to annul her vows. Anyway, Rabbi Shimon Omer biasa o chalitza sa me'achiv shel rishon poteres tzarasa. He says if it happens that she's in a yibum situation now, and one of the first husband's brothers comes and does yibum to her or does chalitza to her, it also frees her co-wives from the need for yibum or chalitza. Ve'ein havlad mimenu mamzer, and the child from this is not a mamzer. In other words, it's a kosher marriage. And if she returned to her first husband and had a child from him before he was forced to divorce her, nonetheless the child is not a mamzer. He doesn't hold by this mamzer derabanan story. Okay. Ve'imni says shelo birshus. Well, now what? Now that sounds that like she remarried without permission, but that's without permission of the court. So when can you remarry without the permission of the court is when you've got two witnesses. So in other words, two witnesses came and told her your husband's dead. Okay, You don't need to get a heter from the court from that. If you've got two witnesses that say that the husband's dead, the husband is dead. So therefore, she can remarry without asking for permission. And if it turns out that these two witness taka were lying, um, Muteris lachzorlo, then it is a complete honest. It's considered complete honest that she was living with another man. She just walks out from him and goes back to her first husband, and everything is back to normal. Okay, so that's how the strength of the witnesses is that it turns her shogeg, which she's responsible for, into a mazid, into not into an honest that she's completely held and not responsible for. Okay, Nises Alpi based in now we're talking about the requirement for her to bring a korban chatas for having lived with a man who's not her husband. Nises Alpi based in. So if she remarried Alpi based in the based in Paskin, yes, we've got the one witness you're allowed to go and remarry. Teitze, and her husband did turn up. She must be divorced. Upatura min korban, but she doesn't have to bring a korban because the court ruled for her that she's allowed to live with this man. Now it exempts her from the korban. Loni says LP based in. So in our case of the that we just mentioned, where she had two witnesses and she didn't have to go to court to get permission to remarry, he nonetheless has to divorce her. Oh, wait. Tate say I beg your pardon, this must be talking about a different case. Shinisa al pi shna edim she'idu shemes bala mi bli shenis kefanos. Nestin Tate say. I'm sorry, this has just confused me a second, because the previous Mishnah at the end of the Mishnah said if she married without permission, based in you had the two witnesses, and it said there, Muteris lachzorlo, she can go back to her first husband. Oh, I beg your pardon. That's Rabbi Shimon's opinion only. And the halacha does not follow Rabbi Shimon. So in this, so now returning to the halacha in our thing is that she still has to get divorced. B'chayeves b'korban, and she now does have to bring a korban because it's elevated her to the level of she's now considered still a shogeg, and and she has to bring the korban for having lived with the other man. Yafe koach beistin. So we see that the koach of beistin is strong. She put Shem in a korban because the beistin said that she could remarry even though it was only with one witness, and she nonetheless doesn't have to bring the korban. Horuha beistin linase, if the Beis Din gave her permission to remarry, v'halcha v'kilkala, and now she went and remarried somebody who was not fitting for her. Like let's say she married a mamzer or some other person that she's not allowed to remarry. The chayev is bekorban. Now she does have to bring a korban because the Beis Din only gave her permission to marry somebody fitting for her. So that's what it says here. Shelo hitiru ela linase, and therefore, in such a circumstance, and her husband turns up again, not only does she lose all of her rights, but she also has to bring a korban chatas. Okay,
That's a lot.
it's a lot of stuff. Yeah. Okay,
Oh,
back to Hevav.
hey, Rob. If he performed Kalitza and then performed Mamama and gave her a bill of divorce or cohabitated, if he cohabitated and then performed Mama or gave her a bill of divorce or he performed Kalitza, there is nothing after the Kalitza, whether at the beginning or in the middle or at the end. However, in the case of cohabitation, when it is the beginning, there is nothing after it. But when it is in the middle or at the end, there is something after it. Where the Hummus says whether it is cohabitation or Kalitza and whether it is the beginning or the middle or the end, there is nothing after it. One cohabitates with his Yevamos, whether mistakenly or wantonly, whether coerced or willingly, even if he was mistaken and she was wanton, or he was wanton and she was mistaken, or he was coerced, but she was not, or she was coerced and he was not, whether the nation was only partial or complete, he has acquired her. There is no distinction between the forms of cohabitation. Similarly, one who cohabitates with any one of these arias forbidden in the Torah or disqualified from marriage, for example, a widow to a Kohen Gadol, a divorcee, a kalutza to an ordinary Kohen, a mamzeres, a nisanite to an Yisrael, all a door of Israel to a mamzer, a nisanite, he has disqualified her. There is no distinction between the forms of cohabitation.
Okay.
On to
Megillah and then Moed Katan.
Megillah first. The episode of Ruvain is read but not translated. The episode of Tamar, however, is read and translated. The first narration of the golden calf is read and translated, and the second is read but not translated. The priestly blessing in the episode of David and Amalek need to
Wait,
be read.
yeah.
Did I
Yeah,
skip
yeah,
one?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Carry on. Yeah, carry on. Sorry.
We do not read the vision of the chariot as a half Torah. Rabbi Yehuda, however, permits it. Rabbi Elliot says we do not make known to Jerusalem as a half Torah. 100
Hadjan
second.
Allah Maseches Megillah. Moed Katan.
Oh, and Katan. Okay. You may water an irrigated field during Kol Hamoed or during Shemitah, either from a spring or that has just begun to flow, or from a spring that has not just begun to flow. However, we do not water irrigated fields, neither with rainwater nor with water from a cistern, nor when we dig ditches about grapevines. Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah says we may not dig a new irrigation canal during Kol Hamoed or during Shemitah. The comments say we may dig a new irrigation canal during Shemitah and repair damaged ones during Kol Hamoed. We may repair damaged cisterns in the public domain and clear them out. We may repair roads and streets and ritual baths providing all public needs, mark graves, and even go out to inspect the fields for forbidden mixtures of seeds during Kol Hamoed.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Shkalim.
Zion Gimel. All meat is found in the temple limbs are assumed to be burnt offerings, but slices are assumed to be sin offerings. If meat was found in Jerusalem and assumed to be peace offerings. In either case, it must be left until it is unfit and then removed to the place of burning. If meat is found in the provinces, limbs are assumed to be unslaughtered, but slices are permitted. At the time of the pilgrimage festival, when meat is plentiful, even limbs are permitted. An animal that was found between Jerusalem and Migdal Eder, or at a similar distance from Jerusalem in any direction, males are assumed to be burnt offerings, and females are assumed to be peace offerings. Rabbi Yehuda says those suitable for Pesach offerings are assumed to be Pesach offerings during the 30 days before Pesach. Originally, they would seize collateral from the finder until he brought it in Sachem, but when they began abandoning it and fleeing, Beis Din instituted its Sachem should they come from the public treasury. Reb
Okay.
Shimon said Beis Din instituted 7 ordinances.
You can stop there. Mishnah Vav is for the next.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
And
Shvius.
Shavuos. Zion Hay. Young sprouts of the service tree and of the carrot tree, the seventh year applies to them and to the proceed.
Hold on.
No?
No, it's at Vav Hey. We're Ein Motzin Shimon Sreifa.
Wait a second. Vav, hey,
Yeah.
what did I do? Oh, it should have been um Vav, hey.
We're in Shvius, yeah?
Right. Vav, hey, I went too
Perik
far.
Vav Mishnah Hey.
Too far. Vav. That should be 6.
Yep.
5. 6. 6, 5, yes?
Yes.
Why did I look at another place? All right, whatever. Okay. Um, Here we go. One may not take an oil that must be burnt in 7th year produce from Eretz Israel beyond Eretz Israel. Reb Shimon said, I heard explicitly that one may take from them to Syria, but not beyond Eretz Israel. One may not bring in truma from beyond Eretz Israel into Eretz Israel. Reb Shimon says, I heard expressly that one may bring in from Syria, but one may not bring in from beyond Eretz Israel. They lay down an important principle regarding the 7th year. Whatever is human food or cattle food or a species of dying matter which is not keeping the ground, the 7th year applies to it and its proceeds. Beer applies to it and its proceeds. And which are they? The leaves of the wild loaf and mint, leaves of mint, chicory, leeks, portulak, and milkweed, and cattle food. Thorns and thistles, any of the species of dying matter, after growth of woad or matter, and the 7th year applies to them and their proceeds. Beer applies to them and their proceeds. Okay.
Okay. We're gonna have to stop there. I need to get
Oh,
going. So
okay.
just do Chazara on
On the next two,
on
Caleb. Okay.
next two. Yeah.
Okay. Have a great day. Thank you.
You too. Chazavot Tov. Bye.